How's it going, college basketball fans? And welcome to another edition of the College Pride Press podcast. As always, I am your Sunday podcast host, Brad Kreppel, and I'm joined with my co-host, Brett Siegel. And we have two special guests with us today, Duncan Hensley and Mark Stouffer. So I'll let Duncan and Mark introduce themselves and giving a little bit of an opening statement here. So Duncan, we'll throw it to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I am a junior at IU. I'll be in Barcelona this spring, so I will be watching across the world, but keeping an eye, especially on the Hoosiers. So the past 24 hours now have been a little rough, but we were lucky today after a couple of low weeks ever since the end of the Big Ten ACC Challenge and the Thanksgiving tournaments. We finally got some great college basketball all day yesterday, and still some great games today. So looking forward to getting down to it and talking about it a little bit.
All right, happy to hear it. All right, Mark, what's going on with you?
I'm a senior at Purdue University, but since I'm from North Carolina, I grew up and still am a diehard Duke fan. So for me, this week was a very productive week, even without Duke playing. Purdue had a great comeback, and UNC lost an epic battle against Kentucky. Very entertaining week of college basketball this past week, even with final exams going on, and looking forward to this upcoming week of basketball too, since it is winter break and I will be doing nothing except sitting in front of a TV.
I love it. All right, so as you guys mentioned, there was a lot going on in college basketball this week, as expected most in the past 2 days. So we've got a full slate of stuff we're going to be talking about, spanning across the country with all conferences, and we're going to touch on a bunch of teams. So just wanted to start it off with a game that you were most intrigued by this weekend or this week. We'll let Brett start it off with the game he was most intrigued by.
I mean, I think everybody was intrigued by the number 6 Kentucky squad taking on number 7 North Carolina in Las Vegas, and maybe one of the best college basketball games that happened all year. And we thought some of the Armed Forces Classics games were really good, but this Kentucky-North Carolina game was even better. 203 total points, and we're going to talk about this game more in depth later. The freshman Malik Monk going off for 47, Justin Jackson, a veteran for UNC, scoring 34. And I just could not stop watching that game. Even the commercials, I was biting my nails just waiting for the next possession, just waiting to see what was going to happen.
Oh, I think that might be one of the picks of the segment here. Duncan, what are your thoughts? Do you have anything different?
No, I didn't get a chance to watch the Kentucky game, so I went back and saw an extended highlight package, and I mean that was a lot of fun. One game that I had my eye on was earlier in the day, Arizona and Texas A&M facing off. Just interested because I mean Arizona's been an interesting team. Beating Michigan State in the Armed Forces Classic at the beginning of the year, and you're like, oh wow, it's a pretty good win, but it turns out Michigan State might not be very good. And then on top of that, they lost to Butler and, kind of just treading water. So I was interested to see, Texas A&M, a team that played UCLA close, a team that has a solid game that KenPom actually had going to A&M. It was like 77-76 was the prediction, and they ended up winning the game. The score made it closer. The ending score made it closer than it looked, but they impressed. Laurie Markkinen playing really well. Kobe Simmons stepping up. And without some of the backcourt players there, so that was a great game to watch, and came away impressed with both teams. That I think that A&M will be a team that, I mean, obviously they won't be on the same level as Kentucky and SEC, but could be battling out for that second or third spot, and then going from there in the tournament, from the SEC tournament, and then into the big dance.
All right, I like it. Going a little bit against the trend. All right, Mark, what are your thoughts? Most intriguing game this week?
Well, for me, the easy choice is Kentucky-Carolina. That's the game that showed up on the radar. But since Brett gave that game its prop Purdue, I'll shine light on a different game, Purdue-Notre Dame. I thought watching Purdue all season, like they had done really well against the soft competition, but had failed both their big tests. So this was a big game against a nationally ranked team, a Notre Dame team that surprised a lot of people by being this good in spite of losing August and Jackson. And unfortunately, I couldn't watch the game because I was on a plane back to Chapel Hill. But for that game, I was extremely impressed. Notre Dame's offense obviously carried them throughout most of the game, but the fact that Purdue went against the trend and actually managed to make a comeback at the end. Very much impressed me. I was very pleased with the game. Caleb Swanigan has to be, at this point, a serious contender for Big Ten Player of the Year and All-American status. He had another great stat line. And great test for Purdue. I know for my IU friends on this podcast, it's not exactly what they wanted to hear, but great job by Purdue to pass that test, their last non-conference test before Big Ten play begins. And for Notre Dame, it showed that while they have done better than expected, they still have a long way to go before they want to think about making it to their third straight Elite Eight appearance.
All right, I love it. I was going to talk about the Kentucky UNC game, but that's been touched on. That game was fantastic. If you love defense, I would find another channel to watch, but that was just fantastic offensive display by both teams, and definitely a lot of fun for everyone. All right, so next we're going to move on and do a little bit of the same segment, but we're going to talk about biggest surprise of the week. So we'll go back to Brett. What was your biggest surprise this week?
Yeah, for me, it was the game that Mark touched on, the Notre Dame-Purdue game. And it looked like in the first quarter that Notre Dame had control of this game up by 17 at one point, went in comfortably at the half. And then just in the second half, they didn't play great defense, but good enough. But just the size of Purdue just overtook Notre Dame. And that is what happened, too, in the Villanova game, and they weren't able to stop the drive either. Caleb Swanigan ended up with 26, a lot of that coming in the second half. And that's also another game that we're going to be talking about later. But it just surprised me that a Notre Dame team who was looking so good to start the season defensively and offensively just fall apart like that and blow a 17-point lead.
All right, I love it. Duncan, what was your biggest surprise?
Yeah, so this one also, I mean, not a biggest surprise, but a game that I wasn't expecting to go this way. Oklahoma State playing against Wichita State, going to the Shockers and beating them by 17, 93-76. And I've been an admirer from afar of Brad Underwood and what he was doing at Stephen F. Austin. And then, but once he came over to Oklahoma State, I wasn't sure initially how he would translate directly into that program and what kind of impact he would. But they looked good in Maui, ran into a buzzsaw with North Carolina, but still played well, played Maryland tough, and I think that they're a team that you're not going to. I mean, the teams are going to have a hard time handling in the Big 12, and could play their way into an at-large bid for anywhere from like an 8 to a 10 seed. And I would not want to face off against them if that would happen. So Oklahoma State really, as a season, and specifically with this game, surprised that they were able to go to Wichita State and pull off the upset there.
All right, definitely. The thing that I loved about that game, too, was that it wasn't even in doubt. Like, they were killing Wichita State at halftime, so I'm glad you brought that game up. All right, Mark, what was your biggest surprise this week?
The biggest surprise for me has to be a game last night, actually. Creighton versus Oral Roberts was much, much closer than I think anyone anticipated. Creighton, of course, is ranked number 10 in the country. Oral Roberts was 2-9 entering the basketball game. And the game was at Creighton, and Oral Roberts just gave one heck of a battle. Creighton won 66-65, and that game was just a complete shock. It wasn't like Creighton was really missing anyone or Oral Roberts was playing out of their minds. Just the game, Creighton couldn't do anything. They eventually tightened up defensively to win by a point, but for that game, just really surprising. Seeing the number 10 team in the country almost beat by a 2-9 team, and it also throws some serious questioning onto how good is Creighton. Obviously, they had a really great start with the win over Wisconsin, but the number 10 team in the country should not be beating Oral Roberts by a point. So heading into Big East play, that's where we'll see if Creighton is truly a contender for a top 3 seed or if they'll fall more into the 7 and 8 seed range.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Creighton's definitely a team I'm very high on, and I think the rankings show that everyone else is high on them. My biggest surprise is not really an upset that happened, but an upset that almost happened, and that's Davidson hanging with Kansas. I know the score ended up being 18-point differential, but Davidson hung with Kansas for most of that game, and they really didn't have a great performance from their star Jack Gibbs. He only had 12 points and was 1 for 7 from 2-point range and 2 for 7 from outside the arc. So, Davidson's really going to be an interesting team to watch. And when Gibbs is on, obviously he's a fantastic player and can carry that team. But the fact that they were able to hang with Kansas without Gibbs having a great game, that just shows you that they're not just a team that relies on Gibbs for everything. All right, next up, we're going to talk about the Villanova Wildcats and one of their main players, Josh Hart, who's having a fantastic year thus far. Do you guys think that Josh Hart's going to be able to continue his success this year? And who needs to step up for Nova to, kind of surround Josh Hart and supplement his great play? We'll go to Mark first on this.
Thank you, Brad. I definitely think Josh Hart is the key for Villanova in order for them to continue their success. He definitely, I think, can continue his tremendous play. He is just shown to be a very efficient scorer and good defender as well. And those are things that don't exactly fall by the wayside coming into conference play. And so I think Josh Hart can definitely continue his National Player of the Year campaign. As for players to step up for Villanova, I think particularly on the low post, Chris Jenkins would have to be that guy to be their second fiddle, as he's proven that he is a very clutch shooter, having drained that game-winning three in the national championship game, but also big enough to bang in down low. He would have to be the guy to step up. And also Phil Booth, guy who scored 20 points in the national championship game, to be that other perimeter player, so that way Josh Hart doesn't automatically get double teamed, but that he can be a legit threat as well, spread opposing defenses more thinly, and allow Hart to continue wreak havoc.
All right, Duncan, what are your thoughts on Hart and the Nova team?
Yeah, so Josh Hart is just proving that he is one of the best players in college basketball. There really isn't much to say. Every time I watch him, I come away more impressed because I've never, similar to Brad, I wasn't a believer in Villanova last year, and I'm still eating that Iowa pick in the tournament that game. I don't think that we don't need to relive that because that was embarrassing. But the performance in the national championship was incredible, and Josh Hart has just taken that weight and brought it into the new year and continues to be the guy that Villanova can rely upon. Eric Paschal is a guy that I think is very important for them. He's transferred in this year and he's given them really good minutes. He played very well against Purdue. When they traveled there for the Gavitt games. But I think I think he's going to be very important for them because he's 6'7". Mikal Bridges also 6'7", and then Darrell Reynolds is 6'9". Those are their tallest three players that really play, and then you go down to Dylan Painter, who plays 5.5% of the minutes. So I would expect. Unless Dylan Painter somehow sees a massive uptick in minutes by the time Big East play comes around. Villanova is really going to have to rely on their taller players to handle the big players, big power forwards and centers on the inside, and that's the biggest question I have about Villanova is when they do play a big team. For example, if they do play North Carolina again, how are they going to handle their bigs? So I'm looking at Eric Paschal, Mikal Bridges, and Darrell Reynolds, specifically those three, to step up and give them some punch in the front court.
Yeah, I definitely agree with those statements. Brett, do you think Josh Hart's going to be able to keep this up and carry Nova for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think Josh Hart is easily, hands down, the best senior in college basketball right now. And I think Duncan and Mark said it best in the fact that Villanova losing Ochefu last year after the championship round, they don't really have a go-to guy that's really big in the post. They have Chris Jenkins, who I guess is considered a big. He plays the 3 and 4. But Villanova, to me, is a lot like Notre Dame in the fact that they're not a big team. They got a lot of shooters and not a lot of height. So like Duncan was just saying, if they run into UNC again or a team like UNC with size, how exactly will Villanova be able to contain them? because they can easily get bullied down low in the post. They don't have the size to back it up. So for the type of players that Villanova has and for who needs to step up to take some pressure off Josh Hart, I think it goes right back to the other two leaders of this team with Chris Jenkins and Jalen Brunson. They've been decent at most this year, but they really have not been great. They've been go-to guys nonetheless for Josh Hart, and they've been putting up some good numbers themselves. But Brunson needs to limit some of his turnovers a little bit. He needs to start dishing the ball a bit more and take a lot of the pressure off Josh Hart, because Josh Hart's going down the floor and kind of acting like the point guard for this team. And if Jalen Brunson could take a lot of pressure off of that and take control of the offense for Villanova, I think it could go a long way and get more open looks for Josh Hart.
Yeah, I think you have a good point about Jalen Brunson. He has to be the secondary guy. He always has the ball in his hands, because he is the true point guard on that team. And to kind of piggyback on what Duncan said, they really don't have that much size. But in the Big East, there's really no team that I think is going to threaten them down low with post players or really, good play in the paint. I just don't think that there's a team that can kind of challenge them down low and kind of exploit that weakness. And that's kind of been my Villanova take for the whole year. As good as Josh Hart's been, I think eventually, somebody's going to be able to crack that code. It might not be in the Big East, conference play, but it could come in the tournament. And I'm not as high on Villanova as everyone else, and I'm going to kind of stay that way until I see some good interior play from them. All right, so next up we're going to talk about – we're going from the East Coast to the West Coast. We're going to talk about the UCLA Bruins, and I know Brett is very high. He's got the Bruins scorching hot right now. But is UCLA starting to play some defense? They played Ohio State over the weekend, and Ohio State's just kind of okay. They're just kind of blah. But is UCLA your favorite to win the Pac-12, and do you think that they have the defensive stature to be able to make a deep run in the tournament? We'll go to Brett first.
Yeah, I think this UCLA team has shown us enough so far that they are the team to beat out west. And with teams like USC who are playing perfect right now, you can say they're 10-0. And then teams like Arizona, Oregon, Cal, who are all two-loss teams who are always on top of the Pac-12. I think UCLA is the team to beat here. And what's making them even more scary is that not only did they put up 90-plus in 4 straight games going into the Ohio State matchup, but then in the Ohio State matchup, like Brad just said, they started playing some defense. And if this team can start playing some defense, I mean, we saw Lonzo Ball actually playing defense for once. So if Coach Alford can get Lonzo Ball to consistently play defense and all these other guys buy in, it's just another piece to the puzzle for UCLA. It's just going to make them even more dangerous. They can already shoot from 3. They can already drive. And if you can already, or if they're showing that they can convert on the defensive end, force a lot of turnovers, and just go in transition. They showed it versus Ohio State that they're deadly in transition. You saw Hamilton give the lob to Lonzo Ball, and Lonzo Ball finish it. One of the big highlights from that game. Almost brought the house down with how loud it got then. But, I mean, yeah, this UCLA team is the team to beat out west.
All right, Duncan, what are your thoughts on UCLA?
Yes. So, Brad, I mean, you know better than anybody. I've been on the Lonzo Ball train since the spring last year. I thought that I've made it clear that I thought that he would be the best freshman in college basketball this year. And luckily, I put my belief in the right man, because, I mean, Malik Monk, we're going to we touched on it. He dropped 47. But when you saw those two players go toe to toe, it was Lonzo Ball's Bruins that came out on top, and that kind of takes it even more, is that the impact they showed, they coined it the Lonzo Ball effect during the game, and they showed the uptick in percentages of the shooting percentages for the couple of players. Bryce Alford was one, Isaac Hamilton was the other, and I think Aaron Holiday was the third. And they're making big strides as a team, and it's because of Lonzo. And I thought there was more of the ability that Lonzo can now be the point guard and the initiator of the offense. Because I thought last year, Bryce Alford, I mean, bless his heart, I think he's a scoring guard. He's not a point guard. And I think that since he was able to move to a 2, he's now able to be more efficient and take better shots. And when you have a player that's as skilled as Lonzo Ball distributing to the different playmakers, you can see that he is. I mean, that they're going to have better opportunities, whether it's even driving or shooting the three. So I think that UCLA, I don't think you can say that there's many teams that are better than them in the country right now. And I think that especially with Oregon struggling, we still don't know what they're going to be full strength. Chris Boucher didn't play today. He was in a boot for their game against UNLV. Dylan Brooks still, I don't think he's at 100% yet, or where we can expect him to be. So I think UCLA, until you start to see Oregon really step up and take that mantle from them, I don't think you can say, oh, yep, for sure that UCLA isn't the team to beat. And luckily, December 28th, it will be UCLA Oregon at Oregon. So I think that's one of the top games that we'll see before the new year. And I think that game will go a lot to show if the UCLA defense can handle the pressure from one of the top teams in the country. I mean, they've done it on the road at Kentucky, so now they just have to hold court as well in their own conference. And I'm excited. I'm hoping that UCLA does it, and because I think that Lonzo Ball has a chance to not only be the best freshman in the year, but he could win the Naismith Player of the Year award.
Wow, yeah, and I think Tony Patelis, that was on the Thursday pod, also was fully on the Lonzo Ball train for Player of the Year as well. Mark, what are your thoughts on this Bruin team?
Well, the Bruins happen to have a nice blend of youthful players such as TJ Leaf and Lonzo Ball, and experienced players as Bryce Alford and Isaac Hamilton. And those teams have a tendency to improve defensively as the season goes on. So I would definitely expect this trend, the defense against Ohio State, to continue as a result. As for whatever high school athletes, it takes a while for them to adjust to the size and the speed of collegiate athletes. So non-conference, first part of conference season, freshmen have a tendency to not be sieves defensively, but definitely have a lower standard of defense than they are capable of. And so I would definitely expect the defense to go up as a result. And yeah, coming off of what Brett and Duncan said, UCLA has to be the team from the Pac-12 to beat. I mean, no other. Oregon still needs to reintegrate Dylan Brooks into the rotation, and even if when they do, there's no guarantee that they'll ever be top 5 or top 10 capability. They might have just been the beneficiary of a weak Pac-12 last year to win and get the 1 seed. And then Arizona, they're down to 7 healthy scholarship players. 8 is usually like the minimum threshold to still be a very competitive team, like a championship contender. And Zona, we have no idea when Alonzo Trier is going to come back. So until further notice, Zona is not a contender either. And Cal, once you find a way to stop Ivan Rabb, their backcourt's not good enough to carry them through the Pac-12. So UCLA, at this point, honestly, I doubt it'll happen, but I got to think they have a legitimate chance to run the Pac-12, go 18-0 at this point. They've proven to have a phenomenal offense, and with the defense up and coming, I can't really think of any Pac-12 team that can beat them. And like Duncan said, this game against Oregon will be the barometer to see how much better UCLA is than the rest of the Pac-12.
Yeah, Mark. Jumping off of that, you saw it. I mean, yesterday, Arizona. I mean, down the stretch. I mean, starting with 10 minutes left. I mean, the majority, the entirety of their offense was like Kobe Simmons at the free throw line. I think you just saw that was a perfect example of the lack of depth coming and hurting them. And I don't think. I mean, even if it's an Oregon team not playing at their best, I still think. I mean, that Arizona's lack of depth will be their biggest thing in limiting their potential ceiling, even in the Pac-12 and then in the tournament as well.
Yeah, you guys definitely all have great thoughts about UCLA. They're definitely going to be an interesting team to watch. I think the Pac-12 is going to be interesting to watch, although there's not as many contenders. There's a lot of quality teams that can come into form with Trier and Brooks and Boucher. If those guys come around, you never really know what the Pac-12 is going to look like. All right, so next I want to talk a little bit about Kansas. I briefly mentioned them struggling against Davidson. Are you guys worried about Kansas now after watching that Davidson game at all? We'll go to Mark first, just real quick.
Not really. I'm not too worried about Kansas. They have there always is one bad game for every team, every top 5, top 10 team in non-conference play, where the shots just don't fall. I'm not personally too worried about Kansas. Like they've proven, they have they've proven they can play with good teams. They beat Duke and took IU to their very limit. So I think that I'm personally not too concerned about Kansas. I think that they still, with a veteran backcourt and the return of Carlton Bragg, that this is just a little blip on the radar.
All right, Duncan?
Yeah, Brad, real quick. Are Frank Mason, Devontae Graham, and Josh Jackson still on the team?
Yes, they are. Last
right.
time I checked.
All right. Unless one of those three guys, unless they lose one of those three guys, that's a three-headed monster that can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the country. I'm not a Bill Self fan, but death taxes and Bill Self in Big 12 play. Kansas has the longest home winning streak for a reason. They're a really good team. I think they'll win the Big 12 walking away. I don't really see somebody in that conference that can compete with them to go through the entire conference. TCU's feisty, Oklahoma State's pretty good, Oklahoma okay, Texas we're not really sure. They could be a team that could come back late, but I don't think any of those teams can go through the round robin of the Big 12 and put the type of record that Kansas will. So what's their ceiling? They lost to IU. They beat a shorthanded Duke team. I still think they're one of the top 10 teams in the country. And by the time March comes around, we'll be staring at Kansas in the Sweet 16 again. But I don't think anybody really needs to. I don't think anybody needs to sound the alarms at Lawrence yet and say, we need to figure what's going on. I think they'll be fine.
All right, Brett, do you have anything to add real quick?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this short and sweet with Kansas. I don't think I'm worried about Kansas at all right now, but I think Kansas should be a little bit worried, especially with the way the Big 12 is playing right now. You look at the worst team in the Big 12 number-wise, and it's Texas sitting at 5-5, and we all know that Texas is even a dangerous team in the Big 12. So I think them with their home win streak and their conference title win streak, I think it's a little bit up in the air right now because I think teams like Baylor, teams like West Virginia, Oklahoma State even could start getting some wins maybe at Kansas or maybe home. I do think Kansas is going to lose a few Big 12 games on the road this year just because of the talent in the Big 12. So I think they do need to be a little bit worried.
Yeah, I could see. Baylor will be an interesting team. I want to see how their shooting continue, if they can, their shooting continues. But from the standpoint of hitting the glass, Manu Lecomte is really good. He's one of the. If you've watched Baylor at all, he's jumped off the screen. West Virginia is another team that could be there, but they're a little similar to Baylor in the fact that I'm not sure what their offensive ceiling is. So there are some of those alternatives in the Big 12, but I think that from the depth standpoint, I think that Svi is still going to continue to have his name pop up and play well. I think Carlton Bragg is a guy that he's an athletic player who can go and get you 10 and 10. And there's only a certain amount of teams where their fourth or fifth option can go and get 10 and 10 a game. And so I think from that standpoint, Kansas is definitely a team that has a relatively high floor, but then the ceiling is the question of, are they a national title team? And I think that's going to be a more time will tell answer than anything.
I think we're all forgetting that Carlton Bragg is not very good at basketball as well. So I just want to remind everyone that before we move on, he's not very good at basketball and he's an idiot, as we realize. So that's all I have to say. All right, we're going to do a quick buy and sell. I'm going to give each one of you guys a different buy and sell situation. I want to hear your thoughts. We'll start off with Brett. Buy or sell, Syracuse will not make the tournament this year.
I'm buying that right now. Syracuse does not look good. They're 6-4 on the season coming off that loss to Georgetown. We've seen it in the past. They start off slow and turn it on in conference play. So they're going to need the same thing as what happened last year and do it again this year in conference play. Otherwise, they're not going to make the big dance.
All right, Duncan, Washington with Markelle Fultz will not make the tournament this year.
I'm buying this for two reasons. everything I've watched from Washington, I haven't seen anything to show me that they're good enough to make the tournament. And I'm really hoping that Lorenzo Romar is relieved of his duties, because we're gonna get Michael Porter is some way gonna get his end up in Bloomington. I'm praying every day that happens. But I mean, I don't know how you can watch this Washington team right now and see a team that makes the tournament. So, that's kind of my outlook. I'm buying it. I'm doubling down on it. So hopefully it works out for the Hoosiers.
All right, always finding a way to put Indiana's aspect into the situation of a Pac-12 team. All right, we'll go to Mark. Buy or sell. Notre Dame's lack of size will hurt them moving forward in ACC play.
I actually am going to sell on this one, actually, because college basketball is a backcourt-dominated game. A good backcourt, which Notre Dame does possess, will carry you more than a good front court. And we've seen teams before that have gone and they've had tremendous backcourts and okay front courts, and that usually takes them further in the tournament. So I don't think Notre Dame will be hurt too much by the lack of front court. Well, they might lose an extra game or two because they lose the rebounding battle, sure, but I don't think I think they'll still be a good, really good team, a threat regardless.
Well, you can get Matt Farrell, who can just take all the shots, so it'll be perfect. Matt Farrell, Hero Ball, will be back and at it again.
Here you go, Brad. I'll toss you one right now. Michigan State will be probably a 7 seed or worse by the time the tournament the bracket comes out.
I'm selling it. Miles Bridge is going to come back, and they're just going to find a way to beat Michigan State again. They'll be like a 4 or 5 seed. They'll just pull Michigan State.
So is Matt
you guys
Farrell?
See what happened to them tonight, though?
They were in a battle. I didn't see what the final was.
They lost. They lost to Northeastern.
They wound up losing to Northeastern tonight.
Okay, I take that back. I'm buying it. They're going to be – I'm completely flipping my my argument there.
The weird thing,
they're all over the place right now. Michigan State is all over the place. They got pieces, but
I like the way they ended up playing when in Atlantis against Wichita State. The big guy, what's his name right now? I'm going to
Kenny Goins.
Is it Goins, the big freshman that is?
No, Nick Ward.
Nick Ward. I was very impressed with him. He looked like he was too big for his body, but he played really well. And I like Matt McQuaid too, but Aaron Harris is not very good. And without Miles Bridges, Tom Izzo is Tom Izzo, and he's going to be able to, and he'll be able to work his magic. That being said, Michigan State fans should be scared about this season, because I'm not sure what a good season right now is going to end up for them.
I'm just saying, if a 13-loss Syracuse team can make the big dance last year, then if I'm a Michigan State fan, I'm not worried about making the tournament. They're going to be there. Don't worry.
The thing that concerns me about Michigan State is they're two upperclassmen guys like Tum Nairn and Kenny Goins. They both play over 50% of the team's minutes, and they both use less than 12% of the offensive possessions. That's just not very good. They have to be more involved in the offense, and they can't. Nick Ward uses more than 28% of the percentage when he's on the floor. That you got to find a way to get those seniors. They got to step up and kind of grab the bull by the horns. That's absolutely ridiculous. All right, so next we're going to do a few recaps. And obviously the main game we were going to talk about, UNC Kentucky, 0 defense, but Malik Monk had 47 points. Monk and Fox were both just fantastic, all up and down the court. But UNC, they held their own. Joel Berry not 100%, but they still held there, and they had a chance to win if it wasn't for Malik Monk just absolutely going bananas. What were your guys' thoughts on that game? We'll start off with Mark.
Well, watching that game, as you said, they left their defense at the airport because both teams topped 100, and it looked very likely from the onset that they would. Both teams, Malik Monk in particular, it was it's like a video game where a guy just gets hot and he just never cooled off. It didn't matter who Carolina put on him. Joel Berry with a bum ankle wasn't fast enough to guard him, which on a related note, that's how Darren Fox kept driving to the hoop. Berry couldn't guard him because of his ankle. Seventh Woods, Brandon Robinson, whoever they had guarding Monk just couldn't do anything. But for me, the most intriguing part of that game, Kentucky led most of the way. But Carolina, of course, a veteran team, you knew they had to come back eventually. And sure enough, they did. They managed to tie the game at 95. And then Carolina showed pretty great poise at the end. They took three. Jackson made a three to make it 98-95. And then later, Jackson had a chance for a three-point play. These are two plays that normally would just deflate a team completely. But after the Jackson three, Monk hit another one. And then after the Jackson and one, he missed the free throw. Monk hit another three, and it just showed like Kentucky for a very youthful team has a lot of poise and mental toughness that really should help them. And one of my personal note on the game is after Monk's second three to make it 101-100, Carolina drove down the court, had a chance at half court to call timeout, set up a play for Roy Williams style. No timeout was called. They got off two bad shots. Kentucky got the rebound. Game was won. So it showed that Kentucky's mentally tough. Carolina more than held their own, but old habits ultimately did them in endgame situations.
Yeah, but Roy Williams' suit looked great that whole game, so you can't really complain too much about that. All right, Duncan, what are your thoughts on this game? I know you didn't have a chance to watch it, but do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I mean, from the highlights that I saw, I saw North Carolina with Brad a couple weeks ago in Bloomington. The North Carolina guards outside of Joel Berry have to step up. Looking at this at Kenny Williams right now, he was a second guard with Joel Berry. He played 34 minutes. He had 2 points on 2 shots, 1-2, 1-3, and then had 3 rebounds. He tossed in 5 assists, but I would credit that more to Kennedy Meeks and Isaiah Hicks being better posts and more experienced than the players they're going against on Kentucky. They need to have. And I don't think the guys like Kenny Williams or Tony Brett or Kenny Williams or Nate Britt need to go out there and go get 10 points a game. But they have to show more and be a scoring threat on the perimeter because, Justin Jackson is, from what I saw, he played very well in Bloomington and then had 34 points again. He's having a fantastic year. It looks like coming back was a right decision for him. Kennedy Meeks and Isaiah Hicks, they're going to give you solid minutes in the post. They're going to get you easy buckets. They'll get you plenty of rebounds. But I think the secondary guards outside of Joel Berry need to step up if North Carolina is going to be competitive with a Duke at the top of the ACC, or if they have aspirations to return to the Final Four and avenge that last-second loss last year. So I think that this game shows you that Kentucky did lose at home to UCLA, but they're still one of the best teams in the country. I think that Cal will have his team ready, and will still be. They'll be heard from, and I would be shocked if they don't make another deep run. But North Carolina definitely has some things they need to figure out, and both teams have have to focus on the defensive end because if you're giving up these many points to these high level offenses, it's tough to keep up. And again, UCLA, Villanova, IU, Duke, all these teams are going to be able to put up a lot of points. So you in the tournament, getting stops is at a premium, and if you can't do that, it will cost you dearly. So that's the other thing is I'm interested to see the defensive development of these two teams going forward because right now it's not pretty.
Boy, I thought you were talking about Raphael Davis instead of Kenny Williams there for a second. I had to go and check those stats because they were Raphael Davis-ish stats. All right, Brett, what are your thoughts on this?
I can't argue with that. I can't argue.
Yeah, defensive-wise, both teams really need to work on that. But for me, I learned a lot from North Carolina's end. It did help that Joel Berry returned and Justin Jackson has been looking great, but they don't have that third guy like Kentucky has Adebayo, Fox, and Monk. And then at UCLA, they have everybody, but it's mainly Ball, Leaf, and then Bryce Alford. But North Carolina has Justin Jackson, Joel Berry, and then who else? Hicks and Meeks can score. They've shown it before, but they're not really another go-to guy for them. Nate Britt is lost at sea somewhere. And then Tony Bradley just hasn't looked great lately. 1 for 5 from the field in 15 minutes that he played and 4 rebounds in that game. So, I mean, for North Carolina to be successful going forward, I think the play from their bigs, like we've said in the past, is going to be huge for them. I think Hicks or Meeks could easily step up and start scoring 15 plus a game for them. But yeah, I think North Carolina is just going to have to step up in that spot. And I just don't see Kentucky losing a game moving forward unless they can, or unless they play a team that can put up with the speed of their young freshmen and can contest their bigs inside. Because so far, Adebayo has just had his way this season inside, and nobody's really been able to stop him. He's just muscling his way inside, getting offensive boards, and then even Briscoe and Gabriel crashing the offensive boards. That's one thing that's really helped Kentucky. 15 offensive boards in the game against North Carolina this weekend, and then on the season getting offensive boards has really helped them tremendously win some close games. But moving forward, like I said, unless they run into a bigger size team or a team that can keep up with their size, I don't see Kentucky losing a game to just a shooting team.
Well, I mean, if it's Kentucky or Duke, who do you have winning, Brad? I mean,
Duke's got the size over them and the speed. So.
I want an ideal.
It's going to have like 75 points in that game.
I want a round robin between Duke, Kentucky, and UCLA just to see what Brett has to say, because he's so high on all three of these teams. I just want to see. He's got a crack on one of them. All right, next
one of those games would be first one to 100 wins.
Also true.
You wouldn't need to have a time.
We're going to talk about Butler and Indiana, a tough loss for the Hoosiers, but they really fought back in the second half. Thomas Bryant got called for a second foul with like 5 minutes left in the first half, and they pulled him out, and Butler made a huge run, and Indiana just couldn't catch up after that. So we'll go to Duncan first. What were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, so this was tough. I didn't get to watch it live, and came back and then saw the last 3 minutes of the game live, and then came back this morning and watched the game start to finish. And it was tough because the thing is that I don't think IU played anywhere near the level they can, and they still put themselves in a position to win this game. Andrew Shabazz, I was telling Brad while I was rewatching the game, I was like, I've never thought that I've never rated him. I've never thought that he was, that great of a player. I thought he was a glue guy at best. And I mean, like, not even like an Aaron Kraft glue guy where you're like, man, I hate that guy, but he's good. Like, I just didn't think he was very good. But I mean, he had some nice drives and moves on OG and Anunoby, who I don't know. He might not have been 100%. I'm not going to say that was the reason why you lost. He still played 26 minutes and still had some impact on the game. But Shabazz played really well. I mean, Keelan Martin was pulling up from. He was halfway to Bloomington with some of the shots he made and was knocking down. The three he hit late in the first half that Juwan Morgan hit him with the and one. That was, demoralizing. Look at he was 5 and 9 from deep, and he had as many 3-pointers as the rest of the Butler team combined. And just looking at it, both teams shot 21 3-pointers, and Butler made 10, IU made 6. That's the difference in the game right there. You dig a little deeper. 42 rebounds for the Hoosiers, 26 for Butler. 42% offensive rebounding clip for the Hoosiers. That is really good. But they also had 7 more turnovers. So I think that 13 turnovers isn't horrible. 18% is not bad. IU has had much worse, so I'm not going to blame the game on the turnovers. But once again, the Hoosiers in state just can't pull it off. And I don't know if this has anything to do with it. My dad and I both. Just going back and forth about it, both of the games that IU has lost, the court had the NBA 3-point line on it. I don't know if that kind of messed with guys' heads about where to get the right spacing with. Just something that is trying to make myself feel better, because I really couldn't understand why. It just seemed like IU was caught in neutral. They never really went 7 minutes without a field goal in the middle of the first half. I felt like Thomas Bryant was just dominant. I mean, you saw in that game why Thomas Bryant is going to be so good, is why he's going to be a great player. I mean, he just went out there and dominated on the inside. Whoever they matched him up with, he couldn't. And he took 10 shots from 2. He had 1 3 that he missed early. If he would have taken 20 shots last night, I wouldn't have blamed him, because he was just dominant. And so I think that, and when IU's at its best, it's working inside, outside, and I don't think the Hoosiers did a good enough job of doing that. It'll be interesting to see how they come out in the big Delaware State game tomorrow to exercise some of those demons. But at the end of the day, IU's resume will be fine. This loss doesn't make me think the Hoosiers are going to be any worse. I still think that IU is one of the top 10 teams in the country, and by the time March comes around, we'll be in the Sweet 16 again, pushing for the Elite Eight, pushing for the Final Four. But I think that it showed that IU is not a perfect team, and that there's still kinks to work out with. Deron Davis only eight minutes, which was interesting to me. He had started getting some more playing time. So I was a little disappointed in how little he played. Is that Tom Crean not trusting him to be in the big game because TB had foul trouble. TB only played 29 minutes. So and that's one of the things that I'm interested to see, is that Deron. I don't know if Tom Crean completely trusts him yet. But I was encouraged by the play of Curtis Jones. He didn't have any points, but he was aggressive when he was there. I mean, some of his shots his shot was off. But I like the way he played. I think that he'll be that he's going to develop well, and he's going to by the middle of Big Ten play, I think he's going to be one of the freshmen that everyone's talking about in the Big Ten. So this is serving a little bit as a therapy to help get all this out. So I'm still confident in the Hoosiers and where they will go moving forward. So
yeah, I go right along with what Duncan said, and we've texted back and forth obviously about this game. But if you're going to lose a game, on a neutral floor to a top 25 team that's very good, they're very fundamentally sound, and let's face it, they had a lot go their way. They had a couple ref calls go their way, which obviously that's not going to be a reason why.
Hey, Newkirk didn't foul Chavez. The ball was off of him. IU should have had the ball going for it. That's
yeah. I mean, there was like ticky tacky stuff like that. The foul on Bryant, but Bryant had foul trouble. We had a couple calls go against us. The refs, and we missed a couple shots that we normally make. And all in all, when you're playing a really good team, something that's really talented, one bounce, one shot here or there, that can be the difference in the game. And I think if Blackman makes that wide open 3 that he has in the second half, I think they win the game. So, I think that's just kind of the way it is. And it's a tough loss. But if you're going to lose a game, I'd like it to be that game. The Fort Wayne game killed me, but this game I'm very fine with them losing the way that they played, the way they came out in the second half. All right, next we're going to let Brett take over. We're going to try a little something new, a new segment that Brett came up with. So we'll let Brett take it away.
Yeah, so every week we're going to be doing this new segment, and it's called Who You Got. And every week we're going to be going over some interesting games. And at the end of the year, we're going to see out of me, Brad, and out of our guest analysts, who picks the best out of all of us. And it's just something that we're doing here on our podcast, and we're going to kind of test the waters to see how it works. And we're just going to go through some matchups. If someone wants to say something, it will be a quick 30-second, 60-second analysis on it. And then you pick your winner, and we'll go each week. We'll update the standings each week and let all of our viewers know who's in the lead and who's not doing so well and who not to listen to for your picks.
All right. So where you want me to start this off?
Yeah, so our first game that we'll be looking at this week is Georgia Bulldogs, who are 7-3 in the SEC, taking on Georgia Tech of the ACC, who are 6-3. So I'm going to pass this one to Brad first. Who you got in this one?
All right, give me Georgia going into Georgia Tech, pulling off a big win. KenPom has it as well, so I'm sticking with that. Go Bulldogs.
All right, Duncan.
Yeah, this one's in my backyard. I don't have anything to do Tuesday night. I actually head up, but Josh Pastner is still the new coach of the Tech. Yate Martin is probably the best player you haven't heard about. I'm taking the Dogs in this one.
All right, Mark.
Yep, I've got to go with Georgia as well. Georgia Tech isn't that great. Josh Pastner is their head coach, first year, and they don't really have anyone of note. They're going to finish 14th in the 15-team ACC. Georgia, not very close, I don't think, either.
The Josh Pastner roast will never get old.
No.
I'm going to give Georgia Tech its 4th loss of the season right there, and I'm going Bulldogs too. All right, next one, we got Vanderbilt taking on Dayton. We're going to hand this one back to Mark. Mark, who you got? All right, looks like we lost Mark.
Did we lose Mark?
Yeah.
All right, I'll give it over to you first, Brad.
All right, I'm going to go with Dayton in this one. Dayton's going to be at home. They play well at home. Vanderbilt's still kind of rebuilding after losing their 2 studs last year, so Dayton's going to avenge that loss to Northwestern. They played really well in the second half, so I was very encouraged there.
All right, looks like we got Mark back. Mark, who you got in Vanderbilt taking on Dayton?
Sorry about that. The computer froze for whatever reason, but I'm back online.
Once you say Josh Pastner, your computer freezes. That's how it is.
But I'm going to go with Dayton. Obviously, they're still smarting over that loss to Northwestern, and they'll want to take out their anger out on someone. And Vanderbilt is they're a all right team. They did make the tournament last year, but they did lose. I mean, 5 losses in non-conference play is never a good look. So I'm gonna go with Flyers on this one.
All right, Duncan.
All right, yeah. Scoochie Smith is one of my favorite point guards in the country. Archie Miller is one of the best coaches in the country. Give me the Flyers in this one.
All right, looks like we have no problem so far. I'm going Dayton too. Next up, we got Northern Iowa, who pulled a shocker on the #1 team in the country at the time, UNC, last year. They're rematching this year at Chapel Hill. Duncan, who you got?
Northern Iowa lost to Iowa, and hot take, Iowa is not good this year. Peter Jock, Fran McCaffrey, they're not very good. I think that North Carolina will exercise some of the demons of the loss. North Carolina cruising.
All right, Brad.
All right, so Northern Iowa is from Iowa, right? All right, any Iowa team I'm picking against this year because they're all beating each other. It's insane. It's really stupid. So give me UNC. Any Iowa team you give me, I'm just going to pick against them. So,
Mark, you hopping on the UNC train too?
Oh, when you put it like that, it makes it much more dirty to pick for them. This game's actually 15 minutes away, so I'll probably end up going. My dad has season tickets, but yeah, I've got to pick Carolina. Northern Iowa doesn't look like they're anywhere near as good as last year. Carolina's fresh off a loss. They're going to come out swinging, hoping for a loss because that would be awesome, but I got to pick Carolina pretty easy.
all right. So
Hey, Roy wants you to be pumped about that game. So Roy wants the fans to start making some noise.
No,
Believe me, the wine and cheese crowd is very real.
I think we definitely need to get Zach and Mark on a podcast together because Zach goes to Indiana and is a big Purdue fan. Mark goes to Purdue and he's a big Duke fan, but he's going to UNC games. This is insane. All right, Brett, you go ahead.
For me, I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. I'm going UNC, but by a single-digit victory in this one. Clemson taking on South Carolina. Brad, I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right, I'm buying Clemson. I just threw them in the top 25 poll for this week. I think Jaron's going to have a big game. Jaron Blossom game's going to have a big game for them. And although it's away, I really don't think the South Carolina crowd is going to be that tough compared to what they get in the ACC. So give me Clemson this one.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, I am with Brad here. I'm picking Clemson to pull the upset. South Carolina's doing pretty well, but the competition hasn't been very stiff in comparison. Clemson, on the other hand, Blossom game, he'll probably be all first team ACC. I think, like Brad said as well, it'll be more of a neutral court setting because it's winter break. So I know very well Clemson knows how for these big games They know how to play. They've beaten Duke 2 of the last 3 times they play. One of the weirdest stats ever. So, yeah, I'm picking.
All right, Duncan, you going orange or red?
Yeah, we played against Jerome Blossom game in high school, and he's very good. Yeah, he did some dirty things to us that just wasn't fair. But he's really good. He'll be playing in the NBA next year. Gabe DeVoe. I was very impressed what I saw of him in the early season tournament they played in Disney. Without Sindarius Thornwell still suspended, I think that South Carolina takes a little bit of a hit. And I like Clemson as well. I guess it's a mild upset, but these teams are pretty equal on KenPom. So I like the Tigers as well.
Wow, I thought for sure that we were going to get a split on this one. I did not think a lot of you guys or you guys were going to pick the upset, and I'm going with the upset too. Jerome Blossom game is just too good, and with Thornwell out, like you said, I think he's going to be too much for South Carolina. All right, heading over to California for this one. It's going to be Virginia taking on California, and California not ranked, but a dangerous team in the Pac-12. Brad, who you got?
All right, for all those people that hated watching the UNC Kentucky game, this game is for you. Both these teams are really good defensively. Cal is 8th defensively on KenPom, and Virginia is number 2 defensively. Give me the Cavaliers in this one. I think their offense is just going to be a little bit better. Kyle Guy and London Prentice are going to be the big difference.
All right, Duncan.
Yeah, Kyle Guy, like Brad said, he's an Indiana guy that got away. I don't really think IU was ever really on him, but I mean he's number 1 right now on offensive rating according to KenPom. Mariel Shayok, a guy I've always admired from afar, and I mean Cal might be. I mean they are a solid defensive team, but I think that Virginia is in just all phases a better team. I think Virginia will go into Berkeley and take the victory on this one.
All right, Mark, who you got?
Well, like the guys have said, both teams have top 10 defenses on KenPom, but only one of those teams has a top 10 offense as well, and that is Virginia. So I will also be picking the Cavaliers. I think there's a chance that Ivan Rabb could have a great game against, now that Austin Nichols is not going to play for Virginia, a weaker UVA front line. But for Rabb to be effective, you got to get the ball into him first, and I think Virginia's perimeter defense will be too stingy for the Cal guards to get the ball in on a consistent basis. So I'm taking the Cavaliers. Probably will be pretty close, but Caps will win.
Yeah, I love watching Tony Bennett every year coach this Virginia team. Defense every year, and they always got that one shooter. But UVA going into Cal, and I think the Golden Bears are going to pull up the upset. Expect a big day here.
All right.
Ivan Rabb and Charlie Moore. And I think Cal's going to pull out just a very, very slim upset over the Hoos. All right, and then our final game and probably the biggest game of the month, we got the Bluegrass rivalry. We got the Kentucky Wildcats going into Louisville, taking on the Louisville Cardinals. I'm going to give this one over to Duncan first. What you thinking? Are you going Cats or are you going Birds?
Yeah, is there a way for both these teams to lose? Unfortunately not. I mean, Louisville, I mean, it's just I don't know how anybody can be a fan of them. They're just one. I mean, between Bobby Petrino and Rick Pitino, I think you got the slimiest head coaches in the NCAA. But I think that Kentucky is too good. I'm not sure how good Louisville is. I mean, I like the wins against Wichita State and Purdue. I'm not sure what kind of team they are. The next 4 games for Louisville: home for Kentucky, home for Virginia, neutral court against the Hoosiers, and then they're at Notre Dame before Georgia Tech serves as a little bit of a break for them. I could easily see them going 1-3 and possibly 0-4 because Notre Dame is really good. So I think that this starts a slide for Louisville, and there'll be some eye raises of, oh, well, is Louisville that good? But I do love myself some Honest Mahmoud, so hopefully he has a big game.
All right, Mark, what are your thoughts?
Well, this is definitely the game that I've been looking forward to the most for this weekend. Both teams are absolutely stellar. Louisville's one of the best defensive teams in the country, perhaps the Kentucky's one of the best offensive teams. The question is Louisville's offense good enough to get past Kentucky's defense? Sorry, Brett, but I don't quite think so. I think that Kentucky will win. It'll be very close. I mean, even though it is winter break, Louisville always has a great crowd. I also think if it is a late game situation, the Louisville meltdown against Baylor can't be forgotten. And at the same time, the way Kentucky bounced back against UNC, if it's a close game, and I think it will be, I'm going to go Kentucky.
All right, Brad.
Louisville's got the best defense. They don't turn the ball over, and they get tons of offensive rebounds, so it's all going to be about whether they can make shots or not. They're 226 in the country in effective field goal percentage. I just don't think that – I can't pick them with confidence that they're going to be able to make shots. They're going to have to really get up in De'Aaron Fox's face in order to slow down that Kentucky offense. But give me Kentucky in this one.
All right, like I said earlier, the only types of teams that will be able to stop Kentucky are the teams with size and teams that play excellent defense. And how can I pick against my Cardinals? I mean, we're home, we're taking on the Wildcats. Give me the Cards in this one. Louisville's going to roll over Kentucky in this one.
Wow, roll over Kentucky. That's interesting.
Much.
Hey, anything's possible in the notoriously named Yum Center. So
I do love that name. That is a great name.
They're going to knock down a couple of free throws at the end to win it, and Brett's going to love that roll over Kentucky. He's going to bring that out. I told you they were going to roll over them.
honestly, if Louisville rolled over Kentucky and Anas Mahmoud drops 20 and 20, I think I might just call it a life. Anas Mahmoud is my favorite player in the NCAA that doesn't play for IU, and if you don't know him, you'll know him because he's going to have a big game. Even if Big Egypt.
In all seriousness, though, this is going to be an excellent game. I mean, both teams have excellent rosters. Louisville has shown at times that they can shoot. Other times they've shown that they can't. And then I don't see them stopping Malik Monk at all. So they're going to have to slow down Bam Adebayo down low and see if they can get a lot of transition points, force some turnovers maybe. And I don't know, maybe it'll come down to a final three. I mean, we do have that 1 5-star VJ King. So we got 1 5-star going up against, 7 or 8 of Kentucky. So should be pretty interesting.
Do we have any word if Louisville has been in contact with the Kentucky color commentator for the game plan? do we know about that? Because I mean, in that case, if they do have the game plan, I'm going to take Louisville. But,
but there is word that Louisville sent Rick Pitino sent a few strippers over to Lexington to entertain the players and wear them out.
Hey, Rick doesn't know. He doesn't know anything. What do my players do when I'm not around? I don't know. It's not my fault.
All right, geez. Okay, before this gets way out of hand, we're going to start wrapping it up with some closing remarks. I'm going to start off with my closing remark. It's going to be a pretty good week of college basketball. That game, the Kentucky-Louisville game, is obviously going to be the premier game, but we need to get into conference play. It's getting a little bit dull. Also, if you have a chance to watch some NC State games, Omar Yurtseven is now eligible and playing. He is the big guy that came over and he's put up 91 points in a game over the summer. So he's going to be something to watch this year. So be sure to catch an NC State game shortly. But other than that, I don't have anything else. Can't wait to have a nice little downtime for Christmas, and we'll be off next week with Christmas being on Sunday, unfortunately, but should be a nice little break, and can't wait to just watch basketball. Duncan, we'll go next to you.
Yeah, it's similar to you, Brad. I'm glad that that non-conference play is wrapping up here. I mean, we've had some thin weeks. Luckily, we had a day like yesterday with some great games, but and there's still some great non-conference games like we touched on. Louisville and Kentucky, IU and Louisville to name two that come to mind immediately. But I think it'll be interesting to see here is as the calendar turns over of what teams immediately jump off ahead in conference play, and then those teams that struggle. How do things turn out in East Lansing if Michigan State doesn't have Miles Bridges back? How does the Pac-12 race at the top? How does that develop? How does the Big 12 develop as well? Kind of we talked about how does Kansas go against Baylor, West Virginia, and some of those teams. And I think that the ACC is going to be, I mean, almost about to Syracuse. That's the kind of cutoff line of teams that I think could be big for them, that can make runs into the tournament. So there's a lot of depth in college basketball this year across the board. I think it's cool to see all the blue bloods back up there. But I mean, you still got Gonzaga and Creighton and Wichita State. Those teams will be there in the tournament and could play spoiler once again. So I'm really looking forward to the start of conference play and seeing how these races start.
All right, Mark, we'll go to you next.
Well, first I want to say, interesting tidbit. Indiana is 8-0 against teams not from the state of Indiana and 0-2 against teams that are from the state of Indiana. So take that how you wish. But
bodes well for the Purdue game.
That would be nice. But yes, very happy that non-conference play is almost over. Should be interesting. These games will say a lot, particularly Kentucky, Louisville. Which team can Kentucky pass another big test? Can Louisville prove that the game against Baylor was a fluke? And then also the storyline I'm interested in, when Duke plays tomorrow, there's a very good chance that Harry Giles finally makes his long-awaited debut. And very excited for that because he is a top 3 recruit. Very interested to see with Marquise Bolden and Emil Jefferson, how does he fit into that front court picture? How healthy will he be? I mean, the poor dude's torn both his ACLs. I mean, I think physically he's fine, but mentally that's got to leave a scar mentally. So it'll be very interesting to see how he fits into that team. Duke has a couple of cream puffs, Tennessee State and Elon. So that should be won't be a great indicator of how he fits in, but it should be a nice welcome back adjustment for him.
Jeez, Mark, don't get Brett too excited here with the Harry Giles pick. Before we go to all right, Brett, final thoughts.
My final thoughts are I'm just watching to see which prospects are moving up and down my draft board. I mean, I'm going to be releasing my latest one before the new year comes around within the next few days, so be sure to check that out. But like you said, NC State, we got 2 exciting freshmen, Dennis Smith Jr. and then Yurtseven's back, so that should be interesting. One of the high-rated bigs in this year's draft. And then, like you said, Duke, we've heard enough about them today so far. And then Miles Bridges close to returning. And then the Kentucky Wildcats with a lot of first-round talent playing against Louisville. So a lot of the young bloods and young prospects in the NBA playing this week, and it should be fun.
Real quick question. What do you think of Tyler Davis? Where does he fit in on your big board right now? I was impressed with him, and I was watching him, and immediately he reminded me of Josh Scott for Colorado last year. Where does he fit in right now for you, Brett, on your big board for this year, or then projecting into the future if he wouldn't leave this year?
Yeah, as of right now, I would see him probably not even in the draft field in the 1 through 60 range. He's kind of a really raw guy if you watch him play. It should be interesting how he develops and steps into a bigger role this year with Texas A&M.
Yeah,
and they also have 2 matchups versus Kentucky, so those will be very good games to watch for him from a prospect's point of view. But Tyler Davis, I think he's got to stay for his collegiate career and work on his footwork a little bit in the post, because right now some of these younger guys and freshmen and overseas guys are way higher ranked than him right now. So size, he can't really do that. He's got the muscle mass and he's got the potential to be probably no more than a second-round guy, even as he develops, but could turn into a pretty nice prospect down the road.
Yeah, I mean, they said he dropped nearly 100 pounds since when he was in high school. So you could tell that obviously he's not, near the finished product. But I was interested to see, because I was impressed with him yesterday. So I was interested to see where he kind of fell on your big board.
All right, well, definitely be sure to look out for Brett's big board coming up. You're going to have a lot of familiar names and some unfamiliar names, but that's why Brett's the big guy. He knows what he's talking about, so definitely keep an eye out for that. Thanks to Duncan and Mark for joining us. Duncan, most likely his last podcast of the season with him going abroad.
No, I'll jump over for one.
barring some
Yeah,
extremely circumstantial scheduling,
I'll
it
stay up
might
till
be
2
his
in the
last
morning.
one.
I'll stay up till 2 in the morning for it. Why not?
If Indiana makes a big run, we'll have to have you on. That's
All
without
bets
it.
are off at that point.
But thanks to Mark, we're definitely gonna have to put Mark and Zach on this same podcast now.
Yes.
Just it's gonna happen. All right, so thanks
100%.
guys.
As
Have a
well.
good day.